Battle of Titans is an online competitive multiplayer mech shooter for mobile platforms. From my experience so far, it is one of the best-looking titles of this genre on mobile, despite being over 2 years old at the time of writing this. There has yet to be any competing game released in the same genre that I've found, which comes close to the attention to detail featured in this game. There is a very visceral, weighty, and meaty feel to gameplay, achieved with excellent animation supported by a physics system that works in tandem to create a very believable mech, or titan as they are referred to in-game, for the player to control. With the medium and heavy titans, every step taken visibly reverberates through the entire frame, and your titan shudders appropriately as the animation beautifully conveys the sheer weight and force required to move you forward another step. Weapons feel and sound meaningful, with detailed particle effects punctuating every impact and explosion, making it all feel as devastating as it should be from such huge and theoretically destructive weapons. For those who have always been partial to the fancy of battling in giant walking robots, then the presentation and attention to detail of this game alone is already more than enough to satisfy, especially given it being a mobile title where the overall standard of presentation for game is expected to be much lower. In this regard, Battle of Titans is in a league of its own. These are only the surface details, however, and they are of little consequence if the gameplay does not deliver an experience to match. Thankfully, Battle of Titans offers a deceptively deep experience to match its presentation, which has huge potential for growth and refinement. As should be expected for a quintessential mech game, you of course have plenty of customization for your titan and weapons. Variations in armor modules that can alter your speed positively or negatively, give you damage resistance to a particular type of damage, or a balance between them and raw hit point numbers as you wish. Legs can be modified to enhance speed, durability, or to augment your titan's special ability in differing ways. There is also an additional section for you to install modules which have a variety of effects to support how you want to play that titan. And of course, weapons of the same hardpoint size may also be exchanged and their characteristics modified as you see fit to suit your chosen playstyle. The game's depth extends into actual gameplay also. A player can target and destroy individual parts of their enemy. Legs may be crippled to severely reduce movement speed, or weapons can be individually shot off and destroyed, eliminating the enemy as a threat entirely, without actually destroying them. As well as each weapon having a maximum range to be considered, ballistics are also applied to every bullet and shell fired, with every shot losing velocity the longer it has to travel, and thus decreasing the damage of that shot based upon distance traveled, and causing it to drop towards the apex of its range. The whole experience aims to be balanced around the idea of players' skill being the dominant factor first and foremost, with everything having clearly defined trade-offs, counters, and strengths and weaknesses. So it should be quite clear by now that this game has a lot going on for a mobile title of this genre. But here comes the part where I say, but. I've already said it though. Before I continue though, there is an important disclosure I must make. I have a second channel dedicated solely to making video content for this game. The reasons being for this are a long story involving my history as a small YouTube creator, which I won't bore you with here. However, I must stress that, whilst the success of this game would certainly be in my own self-interest for my other channel's growth, I am not making this video with that objective in mind. Impartiality is a very important principle to me, and I have publicly been very critical of the game on my other channel when I feel it is necessary to do so. And should I ever feel that the game transforms into something disagreeable to me, then I will cease to make more content about it, and decry its chosen path to my subscribers. My objective here is simply to bring attention to a game that holds enormous promise but has found itself wayward and unfulfilled for whatever reason, and Battle of Titans certainly fits that bill. So, with that out of the way, back to the but. In spite of all the game has going for it, it has found itself in a sort of development limbo or purgatory for the last 2 years, with incredibly slow progress being made in terms of content and playability. It features only 2 playable maps, the second being released just under a year ago. This can naturally cause things to get stale rather quickly, as the same dominant strategies become familiar routine with most games. New content has been near non-existent over the last 2 years, with the only 3 noteworthy additions being 1 new Titan, the aforementioned map, and a radar distance modifier. Considering this is a mobile title with nothing else to consider but its singular function as a multiplayer shooter, this lack of content is beyond disappointing, especially for those who have been with the game since the beginning 2 years ago. Between these meager offerings, there have been some stat tweaks and mechanics changes, and the marketplace economy underwent a large change, but the game has been static otherwise. Some would even argue that it has become worse over time due to how certain mechanics were changed to the game's detriment, in their opinion. The game also suffers from a great lack of players, which severely compromises the whole experience, as when you begin to ascend the ranks, you'll find yourself only playing with AI Titans, who, in the higher ranks, are unfair and unenjoyable to play against and with, to say the least. Much the same problem as my prior video on Will to Live Online. This lack of players further pushes others away, creating a vicious cycle of decline. To be fair, the lower ranks still see nearly full player matches the entire time, at least in my region, which is where the game is at its best. Provided your connection is stable, Battle of Titans is incredible, addictive fun to play when matches are full of players. The careful balancing and counterplay of the Titans and weapons, coupled with the generously long time to kill, allows skill-based play and intelligent, creative thinking to shine through. I would liken it to an incredibly fun and destructive game of dynamic chess. As already mentioned, though, progressing through the beginner tier sees all this fun drain away and replaced with frustration and disappointment, as match after match degrades down to only having 2 or 4 human players, with the rest filled with joyless, fun-destroying AI opponents and teammates. Every match then becomes a predictable bore. Because of this, a player interested in winning, first and foremost, is forced to use a very specific and limited hanger in order to see themselves be more consistently successful in this static environment. Adding insult to injury, more frustration can be found from the lack of several core or basic gameplay functions one would expect as standard for a very competitive game like Battle of Titans, which has been inexcusably the case for over 2 years now. Chief among them being the inability to select where on your team's spawn side you can drop your Titan into. A crucial choice denied to the player that can lead to losing a game because chance had it that you drop on a disadvantageous side. Nor can a player properly select the Titan they want to use if they fail to do so before the respawn timer expires, because of how the selection wheel works. Hello again. I'm recording this paragraph several days after my original recording to add a quick update that the 2 lacking gameplay functions I've just mentioned will be added in the next patch to come, and I've personally had a chance to test them, so that's something I suppose. But I still hold a negative judgment due to the fact it's taken over 2 years for them to finally come. Anyway, back to the original voiceover. Several movement, button, and camera bugs have remained for a long time now that wrestle control away from the player when it matters most. The game's networking structure demands a fast, stable, and clean connection from the player, Else, even with a moderately okay connection quality, in some regions at least, everything starts to fall apart and you'll routinely find yourself having shots rejected by the server, rubber banding that impedes movement, being hit by invisible weapon fire, among many others. And hit detection with certain weapons remains very questionable, denying you hits on your target despite you clearly hitting them, irrespective of your connection quality, bringing the stability of the game's netcode into question at times. These are relevant things to mention, because while Battle of Titans can easily be picked up and played on a casual basis, the core game is designed to be very competitive. For a player getting to know the game and playing matches full of other human players, these complaints, if they occur for you, are easy to overlook at first. But if you become engrossed and truly wish to embrace the true competitive nature of this game by rising through the ranks, those issues and more quickly become incredibly grating, and their continued presence just seems absurd, considering how obviously they affect the core gameplay. There is also a complete lack of a proper tutorial for players unaccustomed to the depth of customization available, and the unique, unquestioningly impressive but somewhat inefficient dynamic UI system no doubt will leave others completely clueless, if they are used to more traditional systems and don't realize they just have to tap on the Titan's parts to begin changing and customizing. All of this raises some key questions. Why are things like this? Why the glaring lack of content over the last 2 years? Why are there persistent, obvious, grating issues and omissions that eventually drive longer-term players away and potentially confuse new, prospective players? The answer, unfortunately, is quite a simple one. The game essentially has only one developer. I don't know if this has always been the case prior to release, but I doubt it. For the most part of the last 2 years, though, it seems to have been only this sole developer manning the helm for actual development of the game. Whatever happened for this to be the case, I really don't know. I've spoken with him personally on a few occasions, and his field of development appears to be in the main programming and writing of code for the core game. He's clearly very talented at what he does, and the fact he's kept things afloat by himself for this long a time is in itself very admirable and impressive. I wouldn't be surprised to learn if he programmed the entire game mostly by himself. Such talent comes with not unexpected downsides, though. He seems to be very single-minded and obsessive over his chosen task, to the inevitable neglect and delay of other, more pressing concerns from a player's perspective. Months and months have passed without word or update of what's going on, only for an update to eventually emerge that leaves the player base and community wholly underwhelmed as core complaints and issues, few of which I have mentioned in this video, continue to be left unresolved. Patience dwindles, frustration mounts, skepticism and doubt begin to pervade the community, confidence is lost, and so longer-term players leave, and new players, left wanting by the lack of content, don't stick around either. It's all very disappointing, but understandable. While the only developer vanishes for months on his OCD quest to tweak and adjust the invisible code in the background, seemingly deaf to the customers engaging with his product, one is left wondering who then is going to be designing and testing new maps, new weapons and support equipment, creating new titans, fixing long-standing bugs, conceptualizing, developing and testing new mechanics, making trailers for advertising, developing, improving the UI, QA testing, revenue generating for longer-term stability. These are all pressing concerns for a free-to-play mobile game that is clearly feature incomplete, each concern requiring a good amount of specialized focus. Focus which this one man, who has already proven to be very single-minded in his work, can only properly deal with one at a time, of which there simply isn't enough time before the game is left behind and overshadowed by numerous competitors that had plenty of time and sufficient manpower to later make a superior product in every regard. We're already beginning to see this happen, with other competing games clearly taking pioneering aspects from Battle of Titans, such as the holographic ammo display on the weapons themselves, and making sure to have core features that Battle of Titans continues to lack. I want to stress that there is nothing wrong with being single-minded in one's work. Some of the best people in their chosen field are the best because of this near-autistic laser focus that drives them towards perfection. I am also guilty of being a similar way with some projects I take on, much to the detriment of my personal and social life at times. But time is ticking for this game. No clearer has it been now more than ever, that while raw talent can take a person and a product so far, without a proper sense of perspective for the big picture, or without proper guidance, direction, and adequate pressure from someone to prevent you losing yourself for months in a task that ultimately yields little to no value, or worse yet, backfires completely. If there's no one to remind you that while the project is your own creation, your own baby so to speak, that once handed into the public domain, that no longer remains the case, and it becomes theirs too, and that they must be taken into account. If all of this goes unreminded and without regard, then the game is surely doomed to remain in purgatory until it has vanished into obscurity. I don't want to see this happen. Many, many other people around the world also don't want to see this happen. Like myself, they know it can be something special. Sticking with the game for a long time makes it easy to become frustrated at everything it continually lacks. But if we look at the game for everything it is, then we have, in my opinion, one of the best competitive multiplayer shooters on the mobile market that is oozing with quality and so much untapped potential to change the landscape of the market genre as we know it. It's also very much worth noting that the release of a new game mode is around the corner, so development is certainly still happening, but I question whether the time put into this has been worth the sacrifices elsewhere. I implore those of you watching who have any interest in this genre, no matter how small, to try this game if you haven't already. I think its potential will become apparent rather quickly once you get to grips with it. It doesn't try to exploit you. It's designed to encourage and value players' skill and thinking above all else, and is of incredible fun and quality when everything is working right. It's a true diamond in the rough of a market saturated in greed and exploitation. But it's a wayward diamond, one that needs help to regain its sense of direction. And if it can do so, then it could very well lead the way for many other future titles on mobile, and maybe beyond.